ago.
Oh, yeah.
A big deal. So.
Why is that doing that? Dang, burn it.
And the mayor said naively, he said, we'd just forgotten racing was big business.
Oh, well, we'll just have to go
We
with
thought
it.
we'd always have a
I'll have to try to figure it out later.
So
Okay, welcome everybody to Let's Talk Racing. Sorry about that, Al.
Al.
Caught you
not
in the
ready
middle.
yet.
You're not ready yet.
One more sip.
I am now.
Now, Nick, it's broadcast live on the internet. Go to letstalkracing.tv to find the links. Anywho, all right, so we're going to start out with the racing news from this past weekend or whatever we want to talk about, whichever track.
Another mileage race or gas mileage race?
Another mileage race. What did you think of the end of there, Al?
All races are fuel mileage races.
Okay.
Think about it.
Yes, it is.
Well,
It's
You race until you run out of gas. Well, I mean, think about it.
well, that's
What
true.
would happen
The
if
strategy is about when should I come get gas.
at one time, I'm trying to remember, at one time, did they actually have where they limited you to how much fuel you
I
could
don't
run?
think so. Tires, but not fuel.
I know this different series you have limited tires. What would happen if they said, okay, this is all the fuel you get to run,
That's enough to get you there. Now you
figure out how to make it work?
Well, what if you go into overtime? What if you go green, white, checkered?
Well, I mean, give them an extra 5 gallons.
I see. Well, now,
Then everybody has to
what if I don't need 5 more, but you do?
Okay, all right. Well, figure in your 3 possible green, white checkers into your fuel mileage equation.
Well, then don't give anybody extra.
Well, then that's what I'm saying.
In the middle of the second green, white, checkered, everybody runs out. Nobody runs
get out of the way.
You can't do that.
The one that makes it the furthest. It would be interesting.
That's like saying you start a baseball game. You've only got so many baseballs you can use. If you foul them all off, what happens?
All right. Let's try this.
Yeah.
Let's take a car and have NASCAR R&D sit there and calculate and run the car full as fast as you normally would for a race for that racetrack. See how much gas it takes, including green, white, checkers. We'll say +5.
So you're not allowed to draft.
Well, I mean, how you do it to make your fuel
No.
last.
But you say take a car to a racetrack.
But yeah, if
run
you're
it for 500 miles by itself.
if you're not drafting, you're
You
using
figure
more
out
fuel.
how much you need.
Well, we're trying to figure out how much extra fuel they would need to run through, but still have enough.
You've been out in the sun too long.
I wish.
I'm beginning to get.
It's that thing around his neck.
This thing around my neck is too tight. Oh yeah.
I can see limiting tires,
Yeah,
but you can't limit fuel.
just something different.
Well, yeah, but running the other way would be different too.
Well,
Australian race.
there you go.
Yeah.
Let's have that once or twice, you know.
Yeah. How about it?
For those that are watching the stream, I apologize. Apparently, we tried testing out a 4K camera, and it changed the setting on what it looks like. I have to go in and adjust it.
Collin's a racer. Ask him about fuel mileage.
Yeah, Collin, what would happen?
He'll
if
probably
never
run out.
But you only have 25 laps. You might what? Run 5 gallons of fuel?
That's how much the tank holds, but
That's how much it holds.
we never run out of gas.
We only have 25 laps unless we have like a whole hour and a half red flag. I mean, it's not even going to have
He
a
left the
problem.
car running.
Yeah.
Well, I'm used to a late model, and if I remember correctly, we had 22-gallon fuel cells. So I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
I've even seen people run
Yeah, I
out
get you
of
there.
fuel in that too. But then again, they were putting containers in there to displace the fuel,
So I can run lighter.
so it could run basically lighter, but the fuel was
Lighter.
down lower.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, there was because cars still have to have a minimum weight.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
When's the last time you ran out of gas? On the highway. When's the last time you?
I never ran out of
How
gas.
do I hurt?
Never.
You've never run out of gas in your life?
My daddy
Never?
was a mechanic. He made sure I never ran out of gas.
I only ran out of gas once ever.
I've run
That
out of
was
gas
the
a couple
one and only
times, but it was
time.
the car's fault. The float was stuck. It was telling me I had gas and I didn't.
Do you realize that if Kyle Busch had not run out of gas at Pocono,
Yeah.
and if Joey Logano had run out of gas at Watkins Glen,
It's
He'd
6 in a
be-
row, wasn't it?
Sid
Busch would have
Purdy.
won 5 in a row.
Yep.
Wow.
A record.
Yes.
Well, not a record, because Petty won 10.
Yeah.
But he would have won 5 in a row.
It'd
He
be up
would've
there.
tied,
It'd be up there with people that have won the most in a row. That's for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, but Petty won 10, so nobody, and that's still
He'd been
the
up there
record.
with Harry Gant then, wouldn't he?
Mhm.
Harry only won 4.
4? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. See?
but he won all of his in the same month,
Yeah.
which is kind of different. I still say that no matter what happens in the chase, Kyle Busch has already proved himself to be driver of the year.
Okay.
That's a
Driver
bold
of the year.
statement. That's coming from Autoweek.
Well,
Writer
it comes
out there.
from, I mean,
We don't know what else may happen.
I'm giving you kudos, okay?
it's not just
He
me.
could wreck
I
in the
know.
next 6 weeks.
I
Huh?
think
He could wreck the next 6 weeks.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. The fact that he came back
And made all
as
those.
quickly as he did
Yeah.
and won 4 races,
Yeah.
bang, 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 just like that. That's pretty good.
One driver I'm wondering what happened to is Jimmy Johnson. Where did he go?
He's on the back of a milk carton, I think. Right
I
now.
know, where did he
And
go?
the scuttlebutt is, hey, he won his races, he's into the chase. Now he's going to sit back and do basically R&D
Play
for
around.
these
Is that what
other
it is?
races.
You don't think
Wait a
they're
minute, wait,
more
wait, wait,
competitive
wait.
than that?
Roger,
Yeah.
why would you do R&D at tracks where you're not going to need it in the chase?
There's always
Pocono,
R&D usable.
why would you do R&D at Pocono when you've been there twice already? Why would you do
Pocono,
R&D
maybe that would
at
relate to
Watkins?
Martinsville.
Why would you do
I
R&D at Watkins Glen when it's not a road course in the chase?
I preface that statement with the scuttlebutt is.
You're doing your favorite website.
Your favorite Facebook page is probably floating
Yeah,
around
that's,
there.
it. That's what it is.
Yeah, they won't let me back home.
He said he screwed up and he went to when he went to put you out that one time and he accidentally clicked the ban permanently thing. Now he's trying to get you back in there and he can't.
Well, he emailed me and said, we want you to create a new Facebook page with a new name.
I'm sitting there going, yeah, right.
Yeah, sure, well.
Why am I going to do all that? I don't
Yeah,
care
sure.
about that.
So you know, just say, why don't you create a new Facebook group?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway.
Well, Al, tell us something good, bad, or indifferent about Buddy Baker.
But
Oh, Lord.
oh, Buddy Baker time.
You know, it's amazing to me. Everybody has a story about Baker except me. Because I've apparently not... The only story I've got about Baker is a story he told one night at dinner at a convention about being in the back of an ambulance at Smoky Mountain Raceway in Kingsport or somewhere in Tennessee. He was in a wreck. They put him in the ambulance, they strapped him onto the gurney, put the gurney in the back of the rescue squad truck. The rescue squad truck takes off for the hospital, goes up the banking,
And the doors
the
are
doors come out, and the gurney comes sliding out of the car, out of the rescue vehicle,
Yeah.
down the banking, back into the infield. And the way Baker told it, I mean, the entire table was just rolling. But I've been around him, I mean, Lord, I was around him hundreds of times, I don't know, but you know, everybody seems to have memories, and sometimes I question whether, do they really remember that story, or did somebody prompt them into telling them that story? I don't know. I just know everybody said, well, he'd have won a lot more races if he had better equipment. Well, if you're any good, you've got great equipment.
Yeah.
He drove for great teams, and he won a fair number of races. But I don't know, but that he might not have known how to win.
Yeah.
He only had one way of going.
All
That
out.
was just wide open. And I don't know that back in the day, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and 90s, I don't know that those cars could go just wide open all day, every weekend. You had to be a little bit,
You had to back off
massage him a
someplace.
little bit.
Yeah.
but he won the big ones. He won Daytona, he won Charlotte, he won Darlington, he won Atlanta, he won, Talladega, he won Ontario, he won out in Texas, I think at the old Texas Motor Speedway. I don't know that he ever won a short track race. Maybe Nashville, maybe, I think most of his wins are on big tracks where you just go wide open. And he was good at that. So it's But I do know this about him. All the times I was around him, whether it was in a social situation or professional or whatever, I never ever saw him treat anybody other than with absolute grace and kindness and courtesy, and he was as nice a human being probably as they got out there. He and Petty and people like that are the reasons the sport got where it did before the influx of the young, snotty, rich kids kind of came in. And I think Buddy and that group really carried the sport and probably never got the credit from a lot of people that they should have. Mm-hmm. Benny Parsons was among them. He was that kind of guy. Benny and Buddy and Richard and to some extent Bobby and Cale, but I think Richard and Benny and Buddy were the ones that were most aware that we've got a public image to keep up, and if we fumble the ball, we're going to hurt this sport forever. And I don't think Buddy ever did anything to hurt the sport.
Yeah.
Good guy. Another one of those people at a time when Winston was giving cigarettes away as fast as they could. He probably took every one they gave him.
Too bad they don't give away as many Sprint cell phones.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that Buddy would tell you that was a mistake on his part. Yeah. Bill France Jr. certainly was a victim of that deal.
Yeah.
Benny, maybe to some extent. I don't think Richard ever smoked. I don't know that Bobby and Cale. Richard smoked cigars occasionally, but.
Do you think they would ever, like the mesothelioma stuff you hear about from people that picked up asbestos from working in shipyards and get lung cancer and stuff like that, you think that there will ever one day in the future be a lawsuit against the tobacco company?
Maybe a widow of a old school driver.
I'm sure they've tried. I'm sure
after.
tobacco companies have been sued by everybody, and
they just got.
I think their defense. I may be wrong. I'm not a lawyer, but their defense may be. We told you people starting in the mid-70s that this was bad stuff, and we stringently try to keep it out of the hands of kids.
Yeah.
And we did a good job of that, but people who were elderly or older and could make their own decisions, that's their decision. So, I don't know.
Well, it was an everyday social thing, for people that came along in their 50s, 40s, and 50s, and you would look at any of the movies, and everybody's got a cigarette in their hand.
It used to be you'd see commercials for cigarette featuring doctors.
Oh,
Yeah.
doctors.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no, working in the hospital for 40 years.
I'll tell you
They
one
would sit there and talk to a patient in the room and smoke
Smoke it,
cigarettes.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
Many
crazy.
a time.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Something that'll shock you a little bit when you watch an old Andy Griffith show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting there watching it, and there's Andy, puffing away after dinner.
Yeah.
You're thinking, wow, you think it was such a wholesome family, clean show, and now you would never see somebody smoke on camera. But you look at that.
And I love Lucy, and baseball players promoted cigarettes, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, we
That's
have
great.
Liz Allison is going to be calling in here in just a couple of minutes. Then we have her son Robbie Allison right after that,
Okay.
and then Erica Ortiz. So good mixing. I'm surprised you never actually ever talked to Liz, Al.
I've talked to her on occasion, but
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. This will be actually the first time we will be talking with Robbie. We've had Liz on before.
I remember one year that Davy came to Langley and ran it was a sportsman race of some sort, and I think she was with him, and I think
Hey, Liz.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
We were just reminiscing back in the day at Langley Speedway when Davey came out there, and Al Pearce from Autoweek, he was just trying to remember if you had actually accompanied him that day.
he came in for one of those races where you bring in 4 or 5 big stars, and they do kind of a match race deal, and Joe Carver paid him in cash in paper bags.
Oh, that's hilarious. Where was it?
Langley Speedway up in Hampton, Virginia. Oh no, I know what it was. No. I know what it was. Dover Speedway, Dover Downs brought Davey into Norfolk for a PR event like the Thursday or Wednesday before a cup race.
Okay.
And they asked
me.
me.
They would do that quite often.
Right. They asked me to pick him up at the airport and take him to a sports club downtown, and that might have been where I met you. Did you ever live in Clinton, South Carolina, or was my information wrong?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I went to PC way back in the early '60s, so I was there I was there a long time before you were there. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, how about that?
Yeah, that's where I first met Monty Dutton. Way back in the day. Yeah. Used to go to Whiteford's for hamburgers and Charlie Hollis's for burgers and all kinds of stuff. So, anyway, tell us what you're doing. Now, you're quite the media star out in Nashville. You've got a radio show and do some TV out there with NASCAR. Am I correct on that?
Oh yeah, I've been doing radio here in Nashville for I'm in my 12th year here in the Nashville area. And it's funny, I started with a fellow you may know, or may have heard of, Larry Woody.
Yeah,
Larry Woody. Actually, I just saw him a couple of weeks ago. I know Robbie is joining y'all later on the show. Robbie and I went down and he has a little radio show that he does with Carol Davis at Middle Tennessee Racing News, so we went down and sat in with them for a couple of segments. I have not seen those guys in years. So when I started in radio in Nashville, I was coming off the road with TNT as a pit reporter, and I thought, well, maybe I could do some little radio in between some of the work that I'm doing. And so I started on a Sunday night show with Carol Davis and with Larry, and then I went on and started doing day parts and doing the morning drive and the afternoon drive, and started doing some more stuff like that. So we kind of went in our different directions. And then the guy that I host one of my radio shows with, it's called Race Night. This is our 12th year together. Darren McFarlane is his name. So we go out and we do a handful of races on site every year, but we have weekly programming. So I do radio 3 days a week, all NASCAR programming, and then from a trackside standpoint, I have an event hospitality company that does all NASCAR events, and so I go out and do about anywhere from 13 to 15 events a year with that, and so that's great fun. In fact, I have a radio event and trackside hospitality event at Bristol next weekend. Excuse me. So Bobby and Robbie Allison will be making appearances at that, and Ward Burton as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. So I stay busy. I'm still writing and doing some different publications, so I stay busy and love it, and I'm just blessed to be in the sport that I love so much.
I bet you know my friend Larry Woody.
Oh yeah, I know Larry Woody really well.
You probably know Clyde Bolton.
I do know Clyde Bolton.
And obviously you know Eli quite well.
Yeah, oh yeah. Eli, yeah, in fact, Eli had done some work here in Nashville for the Predators. We had the Nashville Predators, our hockey team, and our station at the time was the Predator station. Now we've all switched over to another station where we're at the ESPN affiliate here in town, and the Predators are with us there. But Eli and I go way back. Eli and Neil Bonnet used to fly on mine and Davy's airplane when we would go to races. And I remember, I'll tell a funny story. We were coming back from Dover, Delaware one time. Our pilot at the time made a not so smart move and took us right into the middle of a horrible thunderstorm. And actually, Davey was not with us. It was Neil Bonnet and Eli Gold and myself. And we got in this, and we were in a smaller airplane. We got in this really bad storm that we had, just like cans of soda in the airplane, and we were knocking back and forth so bad that our drinks spilled over. We were all holding those to the side, and I was Hail Marying and saying the last rites, if you will. I thought, this is it. And I'm going down with Neil Bonnet and Eli Gold, and it was, we laugh about it now. I'm with Jim McNeil before he lost his life. Man, it wasn't funny at the time, but I used to spend a lot of time with Eli flying around.
It may surprise you to know that Eli Gold was a hockey broadcaster for a team in Hampton, Virginia, where we are right now. And you may be surprised to know that in July of 1977, I took Eli Gold and Claudette from Hampton to Daytona Beach for Eli's first race.
Oh, how about that? Wow,
I have known Eli. I have known Eli and Claudette since '77, and my wife and I have one daughter. Eli and Claudette have a daughter. My daughter and their daughter are about the same age. So Eli and I go way back, and he is one of a kind. Believe me, he is.
Yes, he is. I know Eli and Claudette very well. In fact, Elise and Krista are the same age. So
okay.
Claudette used to help me with Krista when we would go to Charlotte and some other races that she would come to with Elise, and she would watch Krista for me sometimes, so I could go down and be with Davey, and things were a lot different then. We didn't have the multi-million-dollar motor coaches and such at the time, so we had to really depend on a space that we could get to and somebody to help us out. But yeah, I've known Eli and Claudette ever since I've been in the sport. I've known them a long time. You've known them longer than me, but I've known them for a long time.
All right, hey Liz, this is Collin Brown, a local legend car driver here in Virginia.
Hey there.
How have all these books helped you deal with your losses in life and helped your family overcome the lifestyle change from the weekly series of NASCAR to a more normal everyday lifestyle?
Well, I don't know if you would ever call my life normal. If there's something that I have figured out is that I don't know what normal is, and so and we love it that way most of the time. From my standpoint, when we lost Davey in '93, Robbie and Pearce were very young. Robbie was just 1.5, and he was about 2 weeks short of his second birthday. So Davey died on July 13th, and Robbie's birthday is July 30th. So he turned 2 that July, and then Krista was 3.5. So they were very young. I was very young too. So we moved to a different city and made some changes. So I was away from the sport from the track for about 5 years. And I still stayed in contact with all of our family, because the racing family becomes our extended family, and I stayed in close contact. I had a very, very close relationship with Bill France Jr., and so when NASCAR did their 50th anniversary and came out with the 50 greatest drivers of all time, and that was all done in 1998, and Davey was a part of that, then Bill France called and said, it's time for you to come back. It's time for you to come back and let your NASCAR family be a part of your life now. And it's been long enough, and it's time. So I went to Daytona with the kids that February, and then I ran into Jim Huber, and we started some discussions, and then I got back into working and went to work for TNT, and started writing, and that had my first book come out that next year, and I've been very blessed. I've had 13 books that have been published, and so I'm very blessed in that regard. But the only one that really was, there were several of the books that were about Davey, but there was one book that I wrote about grief. It's like a little devotional grief book that I think is definitely the most personal. And like with anybody that's lost anyone close to them, whether it be a child, a husband, a parent, a sibling, a friend, we don't have a choice. We have to deal with it, and we all deal with things differently. And once I got to the point to where I could go back to the track and embrace that part of our lives, and that's what we did, and we've been a part of it ever since.
Hi, this is Gerry. What is the name of your book on grief? What is the name of it?
It's Words of Comfort for Times of Loss.
Okay, great. Thank you.
What's some of the other books you have out there, Liz?
Well, I've written fiction and nonfiction. So a couple of stories, a couple of books for Davey. We had Celebration of Life, which was a beautiful book that Howell Press out of Virginia, they published. That was one of the first ones. Then I had NASCAR Live, which was a lot of fun. And then we had Full Circle, which was basically Davy's story, you know, his life. And then I did the Girls Guide to NASCAR and the NASCAR official track guide. And then I was also part of the Harlequin books. I don't know if you guys remember the NASCAR Harlequin books.
Yes.
But, I was part of those, so I wrote 3 of those, and so I had 3 of the books in that series, and like I said, then had the Grease book, and I'm trying to think what else. There's 13 total books, so all of them were racing related, except for the Grease book, which obviously was about losing Davy, and it was more about offering support to people who are going through that.
Right.
So it's been, the writing world has been good to me, and it's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Right. I think that would be fun to write.
You know, somebody asked me one time if I enjoyed it. I said, yeah, when I'm done. I mean, like when I'm in the middle of it, it's not fun, because especially the track guide book, that track guide book was like the worst kind of torture. There were so many different details, and you know, it was, you know, then, you know, when that book came out, I can't even think what year it was. I mean, it's not anything, you know, now we all go to the computer for everything. And I think that maybe came out in, gosh, it was maybe 10 years ago, when if it's been that long ago, 9 or 10 years ago. You think how much the world has changed since then. You know, now we still like to have books that we can put our hands on, but now people go to the computer for all that stuff. And so at that time, you know, I compiled that book that had everything in it that you needed to know, whether it's restaurants or information about the track or track specifics or track history or hotels, you name it, it was in there.
Wow. That must have been a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. I would not ever do that book again, I can tell you.
Liz, you obviously still watch NASCAR a great deal. In just a few minutes we've got left, what is your assessment right now of the state of the sport? Is it in pretty good shape, or does it need a few tweaks here and there?
You know, it's interesting. I had Dave Moody on my show last week, and I asked him the same question because, you know, it's always interesting for me. I certainly have my opinion, and I love asking other people their opinion. And, you know, and I would probably, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'd give it a 7.5, maybe an 8. You know, I think that you know, there's some things that I love and there's some things that I don't. And I do think that the racing was better last year than it is this year, but I think that, like we've seen NASCAR, just like they are at Michigan this weekend, you know, they're working with some things. They're trying some rule packages that will switch things up a little bit. They're trying to get all the data that they can to make the best decisions that they can. I'm interested to see what happens at Darlington when we have basically the same package we had at Kentucky, but just the tire to go along with it. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen in regard to those changes at that track. And I'm excited about where we are. I think Brian France is doing a great job of leading the pack, and I think that he's got all the key people in place, you know, and I mean, honestly, I'd say probably closer to an 8. I mean, it's not ever going to be a perfect sport. There's no sport that's ever perfect. But I think that when we got away from the car of tomorrow, we started to me, that was the biggest disaster with the COT car. And it was during that time that I was actually really worried about our sport. But now that we've come away from that and we're moving in the direction that we are, I think we're in a good place.
I think Brian France would agree with you that his biggest mistake was the car of tomorrow, and he'll say that right up front. That's the worst thing I ever did. So
well, and just the fact that it was called the car of tomorrow, I mean, I thought that was the goofiest thing I ever heard when they pinpointed that the name of it to start with. And it just didn't work, you know. And so I'm so glad that we're beyond that little blip on the radar screen, and we're getting back to, what fans want to see, and that's, you know, we want to see passing, and we want to, you know, we talk about pack racing so much, but you know, we don't want them spread out on the racetrack and not having any passing and competitive racing, and you know, for the most part, the racers don't want that either, unless they're leading and they just don't want anybody near them. But But, you know, NASCAR, they know that they have to take care of their fan base in order to keep the sport healthy. So they're going to continue to make these changes until they get it right. And listen, I mean, Kentucky was an awesome race. We've had some great races this weekend. I'm sorry, this weekend. The past weekend was a great one, but this year. And so I don't think we can just look out there and say it's not great racing. And maybe it's not all the time, but there's certainly been some great races this year. And I thought Watkins Glen was a good race as well. Came down to fuel mileage, but that happened.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point, is it normal to you, or does it scare you to death that your son is involved with racing?
Well, I'll tell you, as a mom, there's a definite, there's definitely a higher level of stress than there was when Davey was racing. And I can tell you, a lot of that has to do with age, too. I was young, and when I first met Davey and we were dating, you know, of course it was exciting and it was fun, and, you know, he didn't really have any bad accidents, and so everything was all wonderful. You know, then as we were married and he started, and Davey had some horrific accidents, as you guys know. And so, you know, after those started happening, fear started creeping into me. And so, even when Davey was still alive, I started becoming more of a fearful wife than a supportive wife. And then, you know, fast forward all these years later, and watching Robbie race, I mean, he's gritty as he can be. He's a great driver, and he's developing at a good, strong pace, and I'm really proud of him, but that doesn't mean that my nerves don't sit right in my throat. So it's not anything out of the ordinary for me to actually take off walking through the parking lot at a racetrack and not watch the race. And so people laugh at me that I just get really nervous, and so I'll like at Highland Rim a couple of weeks ago, I just left everybody in our group and I went walking in the parking lot and I texted and said, let me know when it's over. And so, you know, then I'll walk back over there and you know, be a part of it and be supportive. But I'm not a good watcher when it comes to my son being out there.
Hey, Liz, I tell you what, when I was racing, my wife basically did the same thing. She would...
Oh, well, good. I feel better. That makes me, I'm glad to know somebody else does that, because some people think that's the weirdest thing in the world. It's like, what? You're not watching? And I mean, I'm ridiculous when I'm watching, so yeah. It's just best for me not to.
Actually, when Roger raced, a lot of people wanted to.
Thanks, Al.
A lot of people turned their head.
Hey, Liz, also, some of the racers' wives, I do know, they actually told me that they wore Depends when their husbands were racing.
Oh, yeah, right. Too much information.
I'm just saying, if they're willing to share, I'm going to put it out there.
No, you shouldn't.
And I actually got some people on Periscope saying they used to do that when theirs were racing. They're already posting it.
I know. Listen, on a much slower level, Liz. No.
By the way, Liz, we got Robbie listening in the background here too.
Liz, on a much slower level, I know what you're talking about. When my daughter was a young teenager, between about 13 and 18, we had an Arabian show horse, and she did national events and big time. We went all over the country. I could not watch her in the ring. I'd walk around until it was over, and then when she got her gold trophy, then I could smile. But I know exactly where you're coming from. I couldn't watch her either, and that was just on a 1 horsepower horse. So there you go.
I hear you. I mean, there's just some things that we can do and some things that we can't do, and so I'm just better off managing the parking lot when he's racing. And so when it's over, then I can come back around and be the supportive mom. But, you know, Robbie knows that. He knows I'm like that, and so he just laughs at me, and we're all better for it, trust me.
All right.
Cool. Hey, Robbie, you still in there enjoying what you're listening to?
I'm here. I was listening to everything.
Hey, Robbie.
How often do you guys get to talk to each other, or do y'all stay pretty much in touch quite often?
Oh yeah, we talk about every day when we can. I mean, sometimes up here, I'm in Bristol, Tennessee right now, actually, and up here in the mountains, it can be hard to get a hold of each other sometimes because of the service. But I would say every day we talk.
Cool.
Yeah, we talked just a little while ago before we got on, and I mean, you know, the thing with Robbie too, you guys know this too, and it's not just the racing that happens on the track. There's a lot of business behind the scenes. So So we're, you know, I'm his mom and always a mom, but there's business stuff that has to be taken care of too. So we, if we're not being mom and son, then we've got business stuff. So I'm very blessed.
Well, Liz, let's go ahead and let you get out of here so we can go ahead and spend some time with Robbie, if that's okay with you. I hate to take your son away from you.
Yes, y'all be easy on him now.
Hey, Liz, one more thing. You know, I mentioned I was at PC back in the day. If my math is correct, I graduated the same year you were born.
Oh, wow.
So you can...
Well, that was a few years ago.
That was... we have a big class reunion coming up in October, a big number, and you probably know what that number is.
Oh, wow. Well, that's pretty neat. Well, my dad worked at Presbyterian College for many, many years.
Yeah, he was security there, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was.
I knew that.
He was. Yep. And he retired, you know, from there, and then, and so those, and in fact, I'll tell you this real fast. When my dad passed away a few years ago, we had his funeral that was about an hour and a half from PC, and all of the gentlemen that had worked for him that were still alive, a few of them had passed away. They were all retired now. They all came down and served as his pallbearers.
Yeah.
And so it was so special to see all those men, because I had grown up with a bunch of dads. I had all those men, and I couldn't do anything in that town and somebody not know it, because there were eyes everywhere. So it was, but there was the sweetest group of guys, and so it's a neat little town.
Yeah, I had a good time for the 4 years I was there. Listen, thanks for calling in. We appreciate your time. And
thank you. I appreciate y'all too.
I'll be at Bristol next weekend. I might run into you over there.
Well, I'd love it. Come find me. I'll be at the Ferguson Hospitality. So come look for me.
I know Ferguson very well. They live right down the street from us. They've got
yeah. Well, good.
Ferguson's got a big building here in Newport News. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, guys.
Good night. Yeah, Ferguson's one of their sponsors.
Cool. Robbie, you need to get Ferguson getting you a lot more money into your deal.
Oh, don't I know it? Yeah, we actually Ferguson has been a huge help to me. They haven't sponsored me on a car, but they have done a lot, you know, helping me with traveling, and of course always making me feel welcome in my home city of Nashville. So still very grateful for Ferguson to be around and be involved in my racing career.
All right, hey Robbie, this is Collin Brown, the local legend car driver here in Virginia. Do you feel any pressure in racing carrying the last name Allison?
Great question. Yeah, actually, that was something that, you know, getting back into racing last year, I think I felt it a little bit, and it had a lot more to do with putting pressure on myself last year, you know, as a reintroduction into short track racing, and that was something that I really had to be with myself and pray and meditate on, was putting pressure on myself and reminding myself that, you know, the only shoes I need to fill are my own. And this year I've experienced quite a different dynamic this year. More that, you know, other people have higher expectations of me as well. And you know, having the name, I've said this before, it definitely helps as far as opening doors and interest in people, you know, but you have to walk through the door yourself, and that's something that, you know, I mean, walking into any track, being a stranger there, not knowing anybody before we're getting there, you know, there's definitely a heightened sense of expectation of, you know, is he going to come out here and set the track on fire? Is he going to come out here and be a regular guy? Is he going to be easy to get along with? So those things that I've come to be a little bit more aware of going into any unfamiliar situation. But personally, I feel like it helps me push harder, you know, for my own game. So I do see it as a blessing, maybe a hard one though.
Have any of the cup owners or crew chiefs reached out to you in any way, and are you getting them to help you?
Well, you know, I mean, racing from the highest levels all the way down to you know, Bandolero racing, often people are looking for sponsors, and that's definitely something that, you know, has been an adventure for us too over the past 2 years or so, because you know, not really having, you know, bukus of cash to be able to pour into my program myself, but really needing those lap times, and you know, needing to get some more experience on short track levels is something that, you know, we have to do it. And I think that, you know, sponsorship is something that, you know, is just a tough deal. I mean, you have to have it. You have to be in good equipment if you want to win. You have to be in safe equipment, of course, and racing's just expensive, you know. So that's something that we're always on the search for. And you know, usually, especially with it being local short track racing, it's something that we seem to have a more of an easy time with is getting local sponsors, especially race to race. But as far as getting, you know, full season sponsors or you know, any sort of long-term interest, I think a lot of people are still, just like I am myself, you know, waiting to see what happens next and seeing what the next step is. So that's an ongoing battle, but you know, definitely something that we manage to fight through when we can.
Robbie, from a racing point of view, strictly, just about racing, not about anything else, who has told you the best stories about your father? Where have you gotten most of your information about him and his career?
Yeah, another really good question. You know, actually, that's something that I get stories from tons of people, and I love every story that I get about my father. You know, I mean, fans, drivers, family members. I think that, you know, hearing all these stories about my father, you know, and what a man he was, and what a driver he was, is such a huge blessing for me too. And I think that, you know, really, I know this is probably the predictable answer here, but I have to say my grandfather Bobby, it's something about when he says the name Davey, it's like hairs go up on the back of your neck. You know, I mean, it's there's so much emotion just in the name, and a lot of what people miss out on, which I wish everybody could see, was, you know, of course, my grandfather loved my dad, and you know, we've always been a very close and loving family, but he really respected him as a driver, especially, you know, as he kind of came into his own in his Cup career. But he, you know, my Uncle Clifford, my dad's our younger brother, you know, he was a racer as well, and a really, really talented one. But my grandfather's focus, and I would say a lot of his hard lessons were really focused on my father, because he really saw that the drive and the determination were there on top of the talent, you know. And so anytime he tells me a story about the way my dad drove, or similarities that he might see in my own driving styles, I think that I really appreciate those, you know, as him being my grandfather, but also really from a competition standpoint, I really listen, because I know that, you know, those are lessons that he instilled in my father, and those are lessons that he'd like to instill in me as well. So I always perk up when I hear those.
Well, what about videos or films or DVDs of your dad's wins and wrecks and close finishes and all? Have you looked at them, learned anything about them?
Absolutely, yeah. My whole life, you know, I think that one of my favorite pastimes in my life, as far back as I can remember, has been going back and reflecting on videos of my dad and my grandfather, my uncle, my great uncle, you know, and just seeing not only who they were as individuals, but also kind of what the common family theme is, and you know, what people, I think people use the word legacy to describe, especially racing, you know, a second-generation driver, a third-generation driver, but you know, as an individual that is in the Allison family, I have to look at, you know, what exactly is that legacy, and of course, you know, I wasn't able to know my dad with him passing away at such an early age, but I've been so fortunate to be close to my grandfather my whole life, and to really know that, you know, that remembrance and that legacy is so important. So those are always things that I've really looked at. And, you know, of course, having YouTube these days is great, because, I mean, I can pretty much go look at any video of my dad or my granddad or anyone else in NASCAR history that I want to watch, and I think it's beautiful. You know, being able to, there was a video that I was watching when I was little, and it's just this quick clip, and I believe it's from I I want to say it's from One Hot Night in 1992 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, where he's walking down the pits, and he's wearing his black and red and yellow Texaco Havoline fire suit, and he's got his helmet on, and just the way he's walking is, you just see him completely going with confidence and drive, and I mean you can see not only that he's a driver, but really that he's a proper athlete, and I think that's something that I've always just that quick, profound clip is something that's always really stuck out to me.
That was the night he won and ended up in the hospital.
That's right, yes. And actually, a funny story about that my dad's best friend growing up was Robbie Allison, who is he's his first cousin, but I call him my uncle because of how close we are. A story he always tells me about my dad is from that same night after he crashed. His concussion was so bad that he was falling in and out of consciousness, and he'd wake up and he'd be like, Tommy, who won the race? Who won the race? And Tommy would be like, you did, and he's like, awesome. And then he'd pass out again, and he'd wake up and forget it. So my Uncle Tommy always says that, he won the Winston, 5 times that night probably, so.
Didn't Tommy's kid play football at Memphis State?
Actually, that was Joey. That was Tommy's younger brother.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But that is correct. Yeah, and
yeah.
They're all a bunch of athletes over there. They all still live in Alabama, and that's kind of our Allison legacy that's been left behind in Alabama, and they're fantastic athletes.
Hey, Robbie, got a couple of things from online people were asking. One of them was to mention and ask you about somebody by the name of Lauren.
Lauren Rainier, yes.
Yeah, and the second one was about, do your kids drive yet?
Say that one more time.
If your children are into racing yet.
If Lauren's children are into racing?
No, yours. Somebody,
no, I don't have any kids.
Oh, okay, somebody was telling me you got 2 kids, and so they said that to ask you. But anyway, go ahead and give us about how'd you get involved with Lauren?
Well, Lauren actually, his dad was his dad Harry Rainier, who is just an absolute icon in NASCAR history. Came from Kentucky, and he I think his most recognizable driver would probably have been Cale Yarborough. But of course, my grandfather drove for him, and Harry Gant drove for him for a little bit. I think tons of huge drivers in NASCAR history.
Hey, Buddy Baker won Daytona with him.
That's right. Buddy Baker did win Daytona with that car, and I think that's when it was still the Gray Ghost, right? When it was the silver and black 28.
Yep. 28. Yep.
Beautiful car. But yeah, so he, just a huge piece of racing history and a really amazing guy. Lauren is his son. Well, my father, when he was coming into his own as a driver, especially in the Busch Series and everything, he was really starting to look ahead at getting into the Winston Cup circuit and to kind of continue working towards being a standout driver. Well, Harry was my dad's first Cup car owner in the 28 Havoline car, and that was in 1987 was when they really first started getting together and working towards that. And 88 was my dad's rookie year. What's funny is that actually, Harry was looking at a few other drivers, some more experienced drivers, maybe arguably some more dominant drivers at the time. And I believe 19-year-old Lauren Rainier was actually who talked his dad, Harry, into signing on my dad as an owner. And, at the time, they didn't even have the Havoline sponsor yet or anything. So they really went out on a limb for him, really believed in him, loved what they saw having my grandfather as a driver. And so they decided to continue that path. And obviously, it turned out great. He got Rookie of the Year that year. And, they went on to do great things. And my father never forgot how Harry got him started in the Winston Cup. So, years later, Lauren and I are very close friends. And, he helps me any way he can from Morrisville. Normally I live in Morrisville, but I've been staying all over the place this summer trying to race any short track I can get to. And so normally we've been talking long distance this summer, but normally we're together every day. And he just does whatever he can, if that means, finding somewhere for me to go race for the weekend or, or helped me get set up with something in Mooresville. I mean, just really anything. He's kind of my best friend and my go-to guy. So really great guy to have around.
Cool. Well, let me go ahead and let you get out of here, Robbie, because Al, time flies when you're having fun.
No, I'm willing to keep him for as long as you want.
We got Erica on the other line already. So let me go ahead and let you go, Robbie. Robbie,
let me ask one more question.
Yes, sir.
I know your granddad. No, I know your granddad. I know your uncles, or your great uncles. I knew your dad quite well. Are you ever angry that you never knew him? Did it ever kind of just piss you off that you never got a chance to know your father, and everybody else who knew him loved him so much, and you didn't get that opportunity?
Really great question, and I think that's something that has probably been a very large theme in my life. Maybe not necessarily anger, but something stemming from that, and certainly, especially when I was younger, there was always a piece of there was a hole there. There was something that I felt like I was missing out on, and I think that 24 years later, 24 years into my own life and my career and everything, that's something that I've done a lot of work on, and I've really had a ton of conversations with God and family and friends, and have come to a place of peace about my father, not being here in person, but of course, being able to see the accomplishments that I can achieve from above, and I think that that's going to continue to be a life journey for me. Is maybe wondering, how different things might have been had he been here, but I do trust in God's plan for us all, and I think that so far I've had a really beautiful life, and I know my dad had a beautiful life too. So I think I'll continue to work towards a place of total peace about it, but I appreciate the journey as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Robbie, definitely we're going to get you back on here another time, because there's still a lot more questions that we'd like to ask you, but we're sort of running on time. So let me go ahead and let you go, and I'll get back up with you when we get you back on, because there's a lot of nice things that you do that I've seen, and I'd like to share that as well also.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all very much for having me on. I had a blast talking to you.
All right. Good luck in your racing, and hopefully we'll see you in the top 3 here before too long.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right. How you doing, Erica?
Good. How are you?
Sorry. We didn't expect to get running that long, but you know how it is when you get into a good conversation.
Oh, no, it was great. I was listening in.
So, give everybody a little bit of bio about yourself and the racing you've been doing.
Well, I have been racing since 1998. I started drag racing right out of high school. Didn't come from a background of racing, so I kind of discovered it on my own. Started, from the very bottom of the grassroots level with just a simple street car that I endeavored to learn everything about the mechanic side of it so that I could, advance in the sport and kind of work my way up, and slowly moved up the ranks until I was able to get to Pro Mod, which is the class that I run now. And so we've been trying to make some moves into the Pro Mod world and get back out there after Adidas. But we're in the process of getting it put back together and get back out.
Cool. Now, you said you're racing in the Pro Mod series?
Right. Mm-hmm.
What's the top speed you guys will reach?
Well, we're hoping for about a 240 mile an hour ET when we come back out. The fastest I've been back in 2006 was 212. So it's a little bit of a step up for us, but we know we're capable of it, and we're looking forward to getting back out there and showing what we've got.
Cool. About how much horsepower those things are putting out now?
We're expecting, we haven't put it on the dyno or anything yet. It's still in the build process, so a little early for numbers, but we're expecting to be right around 3,000.
Woo! That's a bunch of horses. Now, you've been out since 2012, you said?
I'm sorry?
Did you say you have been out of it since 2012?
Actually, a little earlier than that. I've been out of it since the end of 2006. We runnered up for the championship in Pro 5.0, which was the class that I was running at the end of 2006. It was a rookie season with that, and as you know, the economy kind of crashed right around then, so some of the sponsor support that I had at the time went away, and at the same time, I went through some health concerns and went through a little bit of a private struggle on my own, and so now that we're all past that and healthy, we're ready to get back out.
Cool. Now, you also do a blog. What was the name of that site again?
I do. It's Horsepower and Heels, horsepowerandheels.com. Basically, we are, in addition to my own racing, I feel very passionate about supporting all women in all forms of motorsports. And so the site not only follows my own blog and my own racing endeavors and kind of the history I've had in the sport, but it also covers all of the other women out there racing and what they're doing and the wonderful accomplishments that they're making in the racing world as well.
Cool. Now, so you're covering pretty much all different versions of racing, whether it's NASCAR, whether it's Formula One, whether it's Indy, IMSA?
Absolutely. We cover any women that's out there, whether they're behind the wheel, if they're behind the scenes in the pits, whether they're a team owner or if they're working, you know, in the industry. Any women that are out there, I always reach out and have an open door policy that, you know, tell us what you've got going on so we can share that news with the world, because I think that that's a lot of the stories that you don't get to hear very much about.
Cool. Now, yeah, there's a bunch of the ladies that I've meet and greet with that are racers. I don't know if you listened to any of the show before you called in. Liz Allison was on before her son Robbie, who was just on before you. She's,
yeah.
You know who she is, right?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so she's also into trying to help out female race car drivers and such like that also as well.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's wonderful to see that, you know, women are kind of sticking together and kind of helping each other out there. There's a lot going on, and it's great to see more and more every day being involved in the sport. And I just want to keep, you know, encouraging and kind of telling that story and sharing the news so that other younger girls that are up there, up and coming, they can get their, you know, their news out and they can see what they're capable of.
Now, it seems, and this is just my point of view, that there are a whole lot more women in drag racing than there are in the stock car world.
I think I would agree with that. It seems, I'm not sure, you know, entirely why that is. I think drag racing is a pretty welcoming sport to begin with, and maybe that has something to do with it. But there are a whole lot of ladies, and they've been very, very successful in the sport, you know, dating back from the very beginning. Shirley Muldowney, who kind of bridged that gap and opened those doors for all these ladies. But, I mean, almost every professional class now in drag racing has some, you know, female champions within the ranks, and they're out there doing wonderful, wonderful things, and I think it's really, really encouraging to see.
Well, somebody online was asking me a question, and I missed it because I was talking to you. Something about what's the hardest thing about getting into racing is there?
I think the hardest thing is kind of navigating the world, because, you know, in the beginning there's a lot of things that you don't take into account. It's part of the racing driving job per se. So learning the business side, I think, is almost as important as the talent that it takes to get behind the wheel. And oftentimes it's even more important because obviously, you know, it's an expensive sport, and if you're not handling the business side of things, it limits how far you can go on the racetrack itself. So I think the business side probably would be the most difficult. The work that it takes behind the scenes, and the daily operations, and the struggles that it takes to get to races in the beginning when you're trying to make your name and just to continue on.
Now, I know a lot of people, and I'm sure you hate hearing it all the time, but everything, when you hear about females in racing, it's always Danica, Danica, Danica.
That is true. She's made quite a name for herself.
What is it you think that the women in the drag racing world need to do to get some of their names more out there than hers?
You know, I kind of ask myself that question a lot. I think that NASCAR in general does such a good job of marketing itself as a sport. And I think that drag racing, although it's, you know, just as exciting, is a little bit, a few steps behind in that arena. So I think that as the sport gains more popularity, and certainly by their own regard, a lot of those women, Erica Enders being, you know, the world champion right now in pro stock, and her getting accolades on the national stage or the mass media stage and things like the ESPY Awards, all of those things are helping to bring more attention to the sport, and it's opening the doors to a wider audience, I think, people that wouldn't have noticed drag racing to begin with, and I think that's going to be, going forward, it's going to be the real driving fact in trying to get more of an audience to drag racing. Cool.
Do you have any sponsors lined up, hopefully, for your upcoming racing?
We're always looking. We've got a few. I've got Excessive Motorsports came on to help us with some of the engine build, and we've got RJS Racing who stepped up to handle some of those safety components for us. So we're working hard behind the scenes to get everything together, and certainly as you know we go forward and we get a little closer to launch date, then we'll be actively looking for some of the season sponsors that'll be with us for the season going forward. But my door is always open. Anyone out there that that wants to be involved, we do a lot more work behind the scenes on the marketing side and on trying to promote the businesses aligned with us. So, I certainly would love to see some new people come on board and take this journey with us.
Hey Erica, this is Collin Brown, a local legend car driver here in Virginia. What do you think about the close fan interaction, and have you had any crazy experiences with the fans?
I, for the most part, have absolutely loved fan interaction. There have been so many supportive people over the years that have kept in touch with me, especially since social media has become such an access point to them. I make great friends out of the situation, fans that have come up to me in the races that have kept up with my career, even while I was sidelined, and have been so supportive in us sitting back the car together and getting back out there that I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to the fans and getting to interact with them. It always comes with a little bit of open access like that. I think can always lead to some difficult things, and sometimes you read things about yourself that you don't necessarily agree with online, but that's kind of the nature of the sport, and you just have to learn to kind of shrug it off and keep going.
Cool. One last question. What's one of the scariest situations you have been in during a race or while being at the track?
Scariest situations. I'm going to have to think about that a little bit. I think there's everybody in racing has had a few close calls on the track. Probably the most scary, I think, that came to mind for me happened in Orlando in 2006, right at the end of my Pro 5.0 season. We were actually racing the World Street Finals in Orlando, and the car was kind of acting a little funny, and we had found out that one of the steering bolts had broken, and it broke at the top end. So as I went to deploy the chutes, all of a sudden the steering wheel was moving, not just left to right like it normally would, but the whole column was moving in and out, and that was a little bit of a ride trying to get it slowed down and stopped. But for the most part, I have been really, really lucky, knock on wood. I have not had any really scary incidents, no major crashes or anything like that, and I consider myself lucky, and thank the Lord for not having had any scary incidents per se.
What's your favorite strip you like to go to race? It's one of our questions from online.
Tough question. It's probably a tie between Norwalk, the facilities up in Norwalk, and Bristol, Tennessee. I think Norwalk, for the history for me, that was the first time that I went over 200 mile an hour, was at that track, and I just really loved the atmosphere and the family atmosphere up there in Ohio. And then Bristol for the the beautiful scenery and just what that track. When you walk in and you hear, you know, the cars echoing off the valley, that's probably right up there with Norwalk.
Thunder Valley.
Yeah.
Well, Erica, I appreciate you being able to call in with us tonight. Keep me updated on what's going on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Keep me updated what's going on with you in your racing career. We'll get you back on here, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll catch you later on.
All right.
Bye-bye. Cool, man. I know Al's over here. He's biting at the bit.
I'm fine. I'm just trying to
Got the sniffles.
Yeah.
You must have been that tea you snorted. Anywho, well, we have to get Robbie back on here again. There was a whole lot more questions. And as Al said, he could have kept on getting it.
Well, I'm sure 50% of what he talks about is his dad, because people are interested and want to know how much he knows about his dad. And
I mean, he has to live vicariously through everybody that has been around his dad, whether, oh my God, Al.
That was a good question.
Yes, it was.
yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Yes, I got several comments about that.
Yeah.
So, people are listening to you, Al. Believe it or not. They listen to you as well as read. Anywho, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff. He does a lot of stuff. And I was surprised. Apparently people can get in touch with him and do birthday parties, and he'll come out.
No way.
And visit with the birthday kid, whoever it may be.
How about that?
I mean, it's something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You get your name out there, people find
Pull
out
up in
about
front
you.
of your house with the car and the whole deal.
I don't know if he pulls up in front with a car or not, but I know he comes in with his driving suit on and stuff like that, so he's ready to do the part.
Uh-huh.
All right, well, I reckon we might as well go ahead and get this thing wrapped up. And I reckon we'll catch everybody next week on Let's Talk Racing.